the first pictures on the moon, the Beatles album cover, the only portrait of Steve Jobs that he actually liked. All of these pictures have one thing in common. They were taken with the Hasselblad. This is the Hasselblad X2D with the new 25mm f2.5 lens. And I shot with it for 1 month in every situation: street, architecture, portrait and landscape. This is the most extreme camera I've ever reviewed, but why is it so expensive and is it justified? Transparency. Hasselblad did provide me with the camera and the new lens before launch, so I was able to test it out for about a month. There was no exchange of money and I'm free to express my own opinion. I have a weakness for product design. To be more precise, minimal product design with that little bit of something extra, with character. And the Hasselblad X2D, simply wow. It hits the mark perfectly. Such an elegant, beautiful design language where every line, every button, every font, everything is well thought out. The body is molded out of a single block of aluminium and anodized matte black. I've never experienced such a level of build quality. We have normal cameras like a Sony, then we have premium cameras like a Leica, and then there is Hasselblad. Just the way the side covers or the display folds up, it feels like it's built to last. It's actually handmade in Sweden, as it says quite modestly at the top. As usual for Scandinavian design, the whole thing doesn't only look good, it also feels very ergonomic. This is the most comfortable camera I've ever held in my life. Once I forgot the strap and I had to hold the cameras for hours in my hand, and it wasn't too bad. The battery has a safety mechanism to prevent it from accidentally falling out. Charging is done via USB-C 3.1 Gen 2. You can see the current charge level at the top of the 1-inch display, which also shows the aperture, shutter angle and so on when taking pictures. The display is the largest of all cameras and I've enjoyed shooting with it. I have noticed for years that I take better pictures and videos when I'm using a larger display. That's why I have a huge external monitor on my Red camera. But it's not only the display that is huge, the OLED viewfinder is too. Cameras usually have a 0.7 crop, but here there's no crop. It's a 1:1 viewing angle and it feels like looking through an IMAX screen. The viewfinder is also sharper than average, 5.7 million pixels. That's way more than the Meta Quest 3, which is a modern VR headset. And you don't just adjust the diopter using a small dial like everywhere else. Here it is motorized. That is so unnecessarily fancy. You move the focus point on the touchscreen, which bothered me at first, but then eventually I got used to it. Nonetheless, an additional joystick would have been nice. I felt right at home with the software. It's beautiful and intuitive. A few icons for the most important points, but if you want, there is an amazing amount of customization, such as cropping marks for 1:1, 16:9 or ultra-wide X-Pen. The performance is comparable to a modern smartphone. There is no stutter, the sound design is tasteful and the accent color is of course everywhere the same, Hasselblad orange. I used the predecessor, the X1D, for a month and it was an unreliable disaster to use. So the fact that this is not longer the case is a huge upgrade. The only things that bother me are subtle. Switching between the display and the viewfinder is not instant at all. It takes about a second. The matte color also attracts more fingerprints and dust than the silver of the predecessor. There's no protection at the bottom. It's just bare metal, and because of that, even though I took care as if my life depends on it, I have 2 fine scratches in here. You may think that the X2D is a relatively large camera, but in relation to the sensor, it's actually surprisingly compact. This is not an APS-C or full-frame sensor like 99.99% of all cameras. This, my friend, is a medium format. It's around 70% more surface area than full frame. And the bigger a sensor, the more light it can capture, the more pixels it can fit. This sensor has, believe it or not, 100 megapixel. That is 3 times as many pixels as 8K. So it's like 12 4K TVs. Each image is around 250 megabytes in size. So it's a good thing that this camera is not only the first camera with built-in storage, it's also the largest built-in storage I've ever seen. It's 1 terabyte. 1 terabyte of SSD inside of this camera, and it's just brilliant. And there's of course
an SD card slot on the side for CF express cards with up to 2 TB.
But that's not the end of all big numbers. Most cameras record in 12-bit, some at 14-bit, so that's 4 trillion color gradations. The X2D can do 16 bits, that is 281 trillion color gradations. It's almost impossible to show what a huge difference this makes in an 8-bit YouTube video, but if I had to describe it, photos are simultaneously softer but also more intense and more authentic as a result. Colors can be captured that other cameras can't even see. And then there is the Hasselblad Natural Color Solution. It sounds like a marketing term, but it's not. Every single camera is extensively tested and calibrated. Over 700 pictures are taken to calibrate each individual pixel perfectly. This information is then stored so deeply in the system that it even becomes part of the raw file. This is unique, nobody else does it. And the lenses are also from Hasselblad, so they absolutely perfectly matched the camera. I've used many professional cameras in my life, but these colors surpass everything. It's like capturing reality itself. Skin tones are the hardest thing to get right. This was the first time I felt like I was capturing what people actually look like. I didn't want to edit the pictures so much because I felt like I could only make it worse. But when you edit them, they have so much scope. It's a great starting point. And then there is the resolution. 100 megapixel. You can see every single pore, every hair, even the photographer in the reflection of the eye. I feel like using a microscope. A long shot easily becomes a close-up. Thank God there's a 5-axis IBIS that can compensate up to 7 stops. Because of it, you can go down to ISO 64 and a 30th of a second and you still have crisp images. But the camera is only one part of the equation. The lenses are at least as important. This is the latest lens from Hasselblad, the 25mm f2.5. On full frame, this is equivalent to about 20mm with an f2 aperture, so it's very wide and fast. Normal lenses can usually handle 20 to 50 megapixels, and that is plenty. This lens, however, has to capture 100 megapixels, and it does it with flying colors. Even completely wide open, it is perfectly sharp. It only has a hint of chromatic aberration in the most extreme situations. The bokeh is soft as butter. The lens flare is very well controlled, it's almost not existent. I've never seen such technical perfection. I even think 200 megapixel would not be a problem. You can get as close as 25 centimeters to things, which in combination with the ultra-wide angle makes it an interesting look. The focal length is perfect for architecture or landscape photography whenever you want to fit in a lot into one picture. I don't only want to show you my pictures and my opinion, that's why I asked 2 of my friends, which are both professional photographers, and this is Nastya. She shoots portraits and weddings. It was her first time with the Hasselblad and she was immediately impressed. The design, the finish, the software and the large display, she moves around a lot, the autofocus was really challenged in this situation. Officially, Hasselblad doesn't even have eye detection, only face detection. But the focus was perfect on the eyes 95 out of 100 pictures. This is quite remarkable with so much depth of field. You often hear in other videos that the camera is slow. We both think that it is not too bad. Yes, there are faster ones out there, but I'm not a sports photographer anyway. I like to take some time to wait for the right frame and emotion. For animals or certain subjects, there is no autofocus detection and no continuous option, so this will bother some people. But maybe in the future there will be an update for it. Both she and I accidentally adjusted the aperture several times because the ring is very slippery. The camera and the lens weigh together 1.4 kilograms, which sounds like a lot, but because the weight is perfectly balanced, it doesn't bother us at all. The high dynamic range really comes into play here against the bright light. The 25mm are less suitable for classic portraits, but way better for dynamic shoots. I think these pictures look very cool. Just like an advertisement. Nastya took about 300 gigabytes worth of pictures in one day, that is 1000 pictures. One battery can handle around 600 pictures. In post-processing, she was thrilled by the colors, but her M1 Max MacBook Pro struggled quite a bit, and even my M2 Ultra Max Studio, so you definitely need a powerful computer to go with it. This is Timo, a man with thousands of talents. He designed my whole channel design, my website, and even a whole book and a lot of dynamic wallpapers. He also does a lot of landscape photography. Unfortunately, he only had very little time and not a lot of luck with the weather, but he also couldn't get his head around the design and the workmanship, how well thought out everything is. I think his pictures look phenomenal. With this old camera, the resolution is often a problem, but here it no longer is.
Thanks for the help. A link to both of their websites is in the description.
I tried my best with portrait, architecture, and street photography. With the latter, I felt uncomfortable at public at first with a camera that costs more than a car, but then I got a lot of appreciated looks from other photographers, and that was just the motivation I needed to take some pictures I'm proud of. The 100 megapixel and the dynamic range are great. You don't have to hit the frame perfectly. You can crop generously after the fact and pull the highlights and the shadows like crazy. Nevertheless, I still prefer my Fuji X106 for street photography because it's smaller, cheaper, and a bit more atmospheric. I tried my hand at portraits, acting portraits to be precise. The difference to normal portraits is that you don't laugh and play around and act very cool, but you want to capture a real emotion. I found it very difficult with the 25mm lens, but with the 90mm f2.5 it felt like cheating. I took almost 200 pictures and I think maybe 10 of them are only so-so. The rest of them impressed the hell out of me. With the soft skin, natural colors, soft bokeh, great sharpness and the pop that all of these pictures have. They are very eye-catching, but they also feel real and impressive. The 25mm is just right for architecture. You can fit large rooms and buildings in the picture, and you can find some dramatic angles, capture every fine detail, crop generously if necessary. It feels like you're honoring the work of the architect as much as possible when you capture it with this camera. Medium format lenses usually have an f4 aperture, but here it is f2.5. The high speed opens the door for night photography. I was able to capture some great moments at low ISO without a tripod. There are no stars above Berlin, but the highlights can turn into beautiful starbursts when you stop down. Exploring new places in the city, I felt perfectly prepared for anything with the 25 and the 90mm. And can we talk a moment about how beautiful these lenses are? How perfectly they match the design of the camera? Everything is made out of metal, even the lens cap and the lens hood. The texture on the aperture and focus ring is the Hasselblad logo. The click of the aperture feels so great that you want to turn it all the time. And for whatever reason you can even unclick it. Locking would have been a little bit more practical in my opinion. If you want to use manual focus, you push the whole focus ring forward and the distance markings appear. This is a clever idea and I feel like the manual focusing works perfectly because you can punch in quite a bit to check if you nailed focus. That is a huge upgrade compared to the predecessor. Next to a Sigma 24mm f1.4, a full-frame lens with similar focal length and aperture, it becomes clear how very compact the Hasselblad 25mm is, although it can capture a way larger sensor and does it in a sharper way, and it even contains a leaf shutter. Yes, the Hasselblad X2D does not have a mechanical shutter. Each lens contains a leaf mechanism, which is unusual and expensive to manufacture, but there are three main advantages. First, it is quieter and oh boy, it sounds so nice. Second, the camera can be smaller, which is why the Leica Q3 and the Fuji X106, two compact cameras with a fixed lens, both have a leaf shutter.
Third, normally when you use a flash, there is the problem that a mechanical shutter can only do 125 or 250th of a second with a flash. But with a leaf shutter, that's no problem. You can go up to 4000, so you can even flash against the sun. You need less power and get more light out of it. And that's just awesome.
If you want to use an old Hasselblad lens, you can only do it with the electronic shutter, and you have to be careful with rolling shutter therefore. Another point of criticism is that the X2D cannot record video. Not at all. This might seem strange, especially because there is a speaker and microphone built in, but my Red Komodo X, a cinema camera, can't take pictures either. I guess it's like the cliché that a restaurant can either make pizza or pasta, but not both.
The strangest thing about this camera is that there is only an iOS app, no Android app, and this is my smartphone. It's a OnePlus Open. And on the back here, there is a Hasselblad logo because it was built in cooperation with Hasselblad. OnePlus did pay Hasselblad $150 million for this cooperation, and they did a great job. It's an awesome camera, and there even is a Hasselblad emulated 90mm lens, like I got here on that camera, which is very handy when shooting. But there is no app to connect those two, and I don't get why.
I was often speechless. Speechless about the quality of the camera. Speechless by the quality of the lenses. It's like having the exact same lens in different focal lengths. The same colors, sharpness, contrast. It's identical. Now after seeing this, I understand why all big advertisements or model shoots are done with a camera like this. Nobody buys this for just vacation pictures or eBay photos.
Conclusion: I put so much money and time into this video, and often I had to think, well, will actually someone buy this camera because of the video? Is it even helpful? And I think the same problem occurs when you're doing a very expensive apartment tour or something like a Rolls-Royce review. Nobody will buy this thing, but it's very interesting to see what the best of the best can offer. I did have cons, actually quite a few of them. And there are other cameras with a medium format sensor and 100 megapixels. But still, this thing is unique. And that's why it's so expensive. It's 8,800 euros and the lenses are about 5,000 euros each. The new 25mm F2.5 is about 4,200, and with that aperture, at that field of view, it's the only lens out there right now that can do that. So if you own an X2D, I can highly recommend it to you. But it's very difficult for me to say whether this thing is worth the money. Are flowers worth the money? Although this is a camera, first and foremost, so something you work with, it's also an emotional piece, because pictures are something that is highly emotional. And this camera is beautiful. From the outside, from the inside, and everything I take a picture of looks beautiful with it. It is handmade in Sweden and every sensor is fully calibrated. It's kind of a wonder that it even exists. I now do have a high level of appreciation for this kind of camera and the people shooting with these kinds of cameras. And I hope this video was informative to you. I see you in the next one. Bye.